Hello, hello. I hope you're doing well. So I will be analyzing three games, and those three games will actually be very interesting. So what's happening is the following. First of all, in the first game, it's a King's Indian defense. And the second game is going to be a Queen's Gambit exchange variation with a very funny line for white. And then the third game will again be some sort of a King's Indian-ish setup. Because what has to be understood is that there is no clear theory for the King's Indian setups or King's Indian overall. I mean, there are in some main lines. For example, in the main lines where white just goes with, the d3, e4, g3, bishop, g2, there are like some attacking setups where the knight just jumps like that. And then you have to understand that you need to push like a moron on the queen side. But if you don't know that, then it's hard to play. Now, depending on how your opponent will handle the position, you will have to switch your attacking plans. Now, in this line, particularly in this line of the King's Indian, so d6 is absolutely normal. Um, Bishop e2. Now, there is a Soviet grandmaster. I mean, I don't know if back then they already had the grandmaster title called Simagin. So Simagin is, for if you don't know this guy, then so be it. But basically, when he played some sort of modern King's Indian defense against black, he played it with knight c6 very often, which was not played in this game. Despite a6 was played, and a6 is already a mistake. Even though the engine says it's good, it's a mistake. Here you have to play e5. You absolutely have to play e5, or you play knight c6, just trying to induce e5. Very often you do get those sacrifices. So e5, for example. Now I will just need the engine just for a quick period of time. This knight e7, and the problem is you will play at some point this and that, or this and that. Now, if the bishop was on d3, then you would be able to go knight h5. The problem is, since the bishop is on e2, at some point if this knight moves away, there would be problems over there. For example, if you end up pushing f5, what could happen is knight g5 and then a problem over there. And knight e6 also trying to sacrifice a pawn but emptying the d5 square. Those are things that happen very often. But I would be recommending you to just test and practice and analyze the line with knight c6, just to induce some sort of a faster attacking setup as black. But in the game, h6 was played, and this is just super slow because now it is close to classical King's Indian setup. It's just that it's going to be very hard for you to push f5. And also, it's just that at some point you end up pushing also the h pawn, some kingside attacks, and if you already wasted a move for h6, I mean, you could have used this tempo to play a5, knight d7, or something close to that, and play knight c5 at some point to play pressure in the center. So, in that move order with h6, I mean, h6 just doesn't make part of this. It's just not part of this game. It's just not this opening at all. But okay, and now in the game, you just had a classical position here after c5. Even just a capture en passant or anything, the engine even recommends g4, which is like, which is funny because at some point you would just get hooked, over there with h4, h5, and h6 will actually not do anything rather than really just induce a kingside attack. But he went castles, and now you're just fine. But king h8 again. Bring those pieces, my guy. Play this, maybe this. You have so many moves to play. This is not ready. It doesn't have to. The bishop doesn't have to move. This is hard to get, but in you know, King's Indian defense setups like that, you have no need of actually using this guy. You don't have to. But you need this guy on b8. The bishop doesn't really matter, but oh my goodness, the knight. I mean, you absolutely have to. But okay, castles, king h8, and now you got a decent position, some sort of. I just don't see why you wouldn't, like just 96, 97, or this and that. You can't do anything now with those two pieces, and you basically play a game where he has like a lot of pieces playing there with only those three. So of course he messed up and he captured, so now it doesn't really matter. You won't get punished or anything. He went to knight h2, which is normal. Rook f6 is off. Again, push those pawns. E4, f4, e3. Maybe just e4, just even to get a position that looks that way. Something that just slices the board in half. You absolutely have to play dynamically. You have to. But rook f6, and notice you're just staying in a place. Sure, now you have the pawn on f5, but you didn't really make any progress. The rook is misplaced. I'm not sure you're going to play rook g6 and fall under some pressure on this diagonal. You're just getting sliced. Sure, your opponent plays f3, but if he goes for something like, I'm pretty sure f4 is also a move here. Let me just check with the engine. Yeah, f4 is also a move, because after e4, your pawn structure is getting fixed. You can no longer push g5, and even though you have a passed pawn after something like bishop e2. You know, white is going to push g4 at some point, like king h1, g4, and you have a problem with this pawn structure. This pawn is never going to stay there. Why? Because this is not part of the game. You have no ways of actually opening up. You're way too slow. You need like 1, 2, 3. After the second move, you're already out. And after 1, 2, boom, the end of the battle. You didn't win the b4 square. You lost the b5 square. So you can't do anything on the queen side. This is weird. This is weak because g4 is coming. And therefore, you just have a weird position. Yeah, but f3, 97, and here, of course, just bishop g5, and this is just completely lost. He played it very well. The engine says f4, but don't think about f4. h4 is just absolutely, he just played the position like you're supposed to. When you have such a positional advantage, you have to do what we call growing a garden. Basically, you play the position by simply improving it step by step, move by move, and at some point the position will collapse. It usually happens, and you have to realize that it can happen when you are, for example, let's just word it that way, when you are, okay, now I need the right formulation. When you're basically not bringing your pieces into the game, you're down a lot of material, you are allowing a passed pawn, or you have basically a problem with your king, and you have two of those four elements, the position can just collapse immediately. I'm just checking very quickly with the sound. I just hope, yeah, the sound is weird. Hopefully you can hear me. Yeah, you can. Hopefully you can. Yeah, normally it's alright. Okay. Uh, in the worst case, it is what it is. A lot of problems with the microphone anyway. Okay, now let's go back now to rook e1. He's just growing a garden. He has the best position ever. And okay, you played knight g8 again. Just nothing preventing you from just trying to bring those pieces in. And if you're afraid of the capture here and losing a pawn, then I guess the problem is just the whole choice of the opening. But okay, and now, yeah, and here what's funny is that you found b5, which is just a tactical push, because if captures, you have rook c7. So, he just happened to have blundered, but after 96, captures, 96. Again, here you have so many weak signals. You could be pushing e4, you could be doing something here. Pretty sure 96, 94 is the problem. Because captures, you can go knight e4 first, you can go ab, bishop takes, knight b5. The queen has to stay in contact. Maybe you have some e4. Maybe you can capture. If you try to dislodge this bishop with bishop f6, it will also be a problem. This is an interesting concept. You're basically attacking the bishop that is being defended. Capturing will never help. Never help white, and you're just threatening to win. And if f4, you push e4. Now it's not the same thing because he no longer has the hook. He no longer has the hook to break a pawn structure on the king side. So it's a very tactical position, very, very tactical position. It's just that you're losing every single pawn. And okay, he blundered pieces. He blundered a piece. So I guess you played better overall. But this is not. I mean, you get the point, right? And here, of course, he resigns because he just blew away his advantage. You have two pieces for the queen. You will be able to play bishop e5 at some point, and this is just much better for you. So the win comes from the fact that your opponent blundered. Um, it is what it is. Okay, just trying now to improve the sound. I think that's the right moment to do that. Okay, hopefully it's good. Okay, let me just check. Yes, better. It's actually much better. Okay, so we will keep going now with the second game. Now it's a game against Mika Kartunen. So I played against this guy already. He lost against me, and it was a very good game where actually I've taught the endgame that we had together, me and this guy, billions of times. I didn't know that he was a streamer though. I would just check that very quickly. Very very cool guy. I had a very good game against him. He's good. He's very good. But as you can see, okay. Anyway, oh what? Whoa. He has 1 GM norm, live rating, 2490.3, and he would have gotten 2500 peak. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. He was nothing away from being a grandmaster. Do you imagine that? I mean, 25 plus a norm, so practically a grandmaster, technically not. But okay, now he played a very interesting line against you. So he played the Queen's Gambit declined, e3, bishop f5, which is a decent line. Although, as black, I would really be recommending you to stick to the main line, which is bishop e7, h6, for example, or something close to that. It doesn't really matter. And then the setup where you just go a5, b5, knight b6, knight c4. Just go for the queenside attack. This is very, very, very hard to play as white. This is also the reason why I'm no longer playing, the queen's gambit. The exchange queen's gambit. And when I'm playing d4 now, I'm going for very practical attacking setups. The same way I would be recommending you the Collie system. The same way, the same way I would be plotting, because with time and practice, everything is in the notebook. With time, the course will always get better. The course, the openings will always get better, and therefore you will always have to either have something new in your mind or always try to basically, add something more, brighten your knowledge, deepen your knowledge. With D4, I would be recommending you at some point just to stick to a Collie system. This classical thing with bishop b2. I'm pretty sure this could be very interesting. But okay, after bishop f5, he went for queen f3 that I was not aware of, and here you didn't know bishop g6, and this endgame is very hard to play. Basically, at some point, okay, at some point you will have to go bishop h6, f5, f4, then f5, f4 again, in case of a capture, for example. So bishop h6, f5, f4. And it's a hard game, and usually the games look that way. For example, this, knight g2, bishop a6, bishop d6, doesn't really matter. H4 happens here, so I guess you have to go h5 first, h4, bishop h6, and this is just a hard game. But this is basically the way to go for black. The engine will give you crazy numbers a lot of time, very often, but this is a way to go. There are many plans available for black. I think there was also a plan where you go that way around, which is also all right. But this is a normal thing. You're just preventing knight f4 at the same time you're preparing f5, f4 yourself. Sometimes you're even sacrificing a pawn to weaken this guy. And very often you end up doing this or doing that, but you do play it that way with the knight, because from d7 it will never have access to a lot of good squares. Maybe you can do this, this, and that. It's like 1, 1, 2, 3. Maybe 1, 2, 3 also that way, because from knight a6 you might have to move knight b4. So also sometimes some minority attacks, or some majority attacks on the king side. This does happen also very often. Basically, the majority attack is something that you have to try in the queen's gambit exchange variation. But you play queen d7, and therefore now you just have a worse pawn structure. It's really an opening thing right now. He played it weird with bishop e2, but humanly, everything he just did is absolutely normal. Castles is a mistake, but it's not. He's not losing his advantage, so he's still having a decent position. So from your opponent, that was pretty much a clean game until this moment. Oh my goodness. Now this moment started to become a real problem. So you found a nice tactic. So basically you blundered a lot. His attack just went on. You really didn't have anything because you just don't have anything with this pawn structure. So it's just the opening choice. It was a problem. And here you found something brilliant. But when I mean brilliant, rook c6, knight d5, it feels like it's just completely dead loss, because it is after knight f6. Because if queen takes, there's queen c6 spin, yeah? But you found knight d4, which attacks the queen and defends the rook. You cannot move away with the queen, otherwise you also lose the bishop. And if you go right there, then there could be some problems where I just captured, and so basically it's just not worth it. You have to capture back, and after queen f6, there is no queen c6 because of bishop h2. But he went rook b7, and the only mistake here is that you didn't play rook c8. If you play rook c8 with the same intention after queen f6, you go bishop h2, you're the king. And I'm pretty sure with the time you had on the clock and with the fact you can calculate very fast, you could have found that. You could have seen the rook takes on c8 and this thing. So I'm pretty sure you could have found that. If you had gone for it, you would have beaten him the same way I've beaten this guy. And now it's just very practical. You have 10 seconds. And the way you should actually be defending and playing at this endgame is the following way. So here you don't have an advantage, just to be sure, just to be clear. Now, you need a rook on the 7th to prevent any rook c7 from ever happening. So here, for example, you could have played this. Maybe you could have played this and that. But you need something to make sure that rook c7 will either drop this pawn or not work at all. For example, if rook b8, rook c7, rook a6 now, which is definitely doing the job, and the pawn is not going anywhere because your other rook is always there to protect. Now, what was basically failed is that you can just go king e5, which was played, but after rook c4, you miss it. You have to play the move f5. The bishop has to move, and you catch there. And if he goes f4, then you have king f4, and there is nothing. Bishop f3, you just move back, and there is no rook e4 because of the pawn. So, and now you're fine because you already won a pawn for the exchange, so you're definitely the king of the jungle right there. Yeah, but now he has two passed pawns, so the Capablanca rule, you're lost. And he just defended that very well. Three passed pawns, you can't break through, you can't do anything. Yeah, eventually here he blundered because of time control and so forth, but it's, this pawn is still way too fast. There was really nothing we can really talk about. Yeah, it is what it is, it happens. Next game, and now this next game is actually very funny because in this King's Indian as white, so this is now a very good setup, by the way, for black. I would be recommending you to go f6. This is a line that I've faced, that I've played. The agent doesn't like that, but it doesn't matter. Sometimes you play bishop f5 first, like in the game. Bishop f5, bishop g2, queen d7, castles f6, this, and this is a very brutal thing. This is very hard to play. For classical games, it is more than perfect. The best way to play for white would be to go for the Kranig's plan, which is c3, knight d2, b4, knight b3, knight c5, and just attack on the queen side as white. But this is still double-edged, and I've lost a lot of games like that as white. I've won a lot of games like that as black because the king side attack is just way too powerful. I'm sorry, this, e5 captures, knight f6. I mean, it's just very elementary. d5, this. Okay, e5, this first, this captures queen there. If they capture with the f pawn, then you still have your center, so you're still running. Sometimes it happens that you go e6, bishop d6, knight e7, and then e5. Sometimes it happens that you just go e6, knight e7, so you trade off. You go e6, knight e7, just to protect the pawn, and once the knight protects the pawn, then you go e5. It happens very often. You get the main plan. You want to trade those bishops and attack. Now, the game. Knight f6, and now you got something very passive. Now you got something very passive, and every single time there is a pawn on c4, you should be asking yourself, what if the capture? I had a game against Sasha Reprinsev, Alexander Reprinsev. I mean, this is a guy that I've met in real life at the Grenke Open 2 years ago, 2024. I was winning, but it was a hard end game, and I offered the draw. He accepted, and this is when I understood that I was winning. One day I will be showing the game, but yeah, anyway. Yeah, and what's happening is that we played against each other since this game. We played against each other 1,000 times on in Touch with Tuesdays, and he's playing it that way against me as black, and he just captures on c4. And the problem is, even if I go queen a4 trying to recapture the pawn, then the positions look that way: captures, knight b6, queen b3, for example, and he just attacks me on the queen side. And this is a very hard. I mean, even though you're black, yeah, this is a very hard game because the center is basically, even if you play e4, there's just so much pressure everywhere. At some point you will castle, go queen e7, and put the rooks there. This is just a problem. Like here, the only move is d5, knight e5, playing on pin, and there is no h3 because of knight takes, bishop takes, bishop takes, and this is nothing because I just captured back either way, and this, this is just nothing. So there are a lot of lines like that. So I would be recommending you to just reuse those lines and re-practice those lines. But okay, but now this FIDE master just got a good position against you. He just trade everything, queen b3. He played this position like an e4 position. Like, he just pushed those pawns on the queen side, minority attack, and yeah, the minority attack was just very powerful. Queen c5, he fixed your b pawn. He went he played the game like in the books. And if this guy has students, he's definitely showing the game to his students because this is just a perfect game. Here he could have played bishop d3 though, just to trade the bishops, then play rook b1. This is a backwards pawn. Every single time b6 will be played, there will be a problem with this pawn structure. So, and this is just a problem. Yeah. And now, whatever you had in mind was good. You had to attack the king, so you attack the king. S6 is a mistake because he's just allowing you to attack. But I do get that you have the main elements in your mind, and you do get what has to be done. It's just a very brutal game. Knight h4, knight f5. This is just impressive. The king is extremely weak. And again, you got attacked on the queen side, you attack on the king side, like in the books. This is a very good game. And here eventually you made a mistake. Here g2 is already a problem because this is mate. So he has to go king e2, but now you have called the inevitability. So you have a position where you can just capture the pawn. So you're up a pawn. You might be playing rook b7, rook b2. and he will never be able to capture on a6 because of the promotion. And and you have a pass pawn. You have a plan, which is to go rook b7, rook b2. So you have two elements of the inevitability. So you have the material advantage. You have a plan, and you have a pass pawn. 3 out of 4, and the king is actually not safe. So you actually have 4 elements of the inevitability. You capture, go rook b7. He can just go make himself a sandwich. Now it's not the case anymore. He played knight f3, and now if he captures, then of course the same trick. F5 the engine doesn't like that, but I do like the move. The thing that I would have played here is again just a capture, just to activate this rook. There is no reason to not open up lines for your rooks. Here he blundered, and of course you punished him. This was good, and now you got the correct idea. It's just that here he's winning because you allowed the king to get in, and yeah, this is very, very unlucky for this one. Here at the end, here sadly it's this is just funny because now after king is there, you're not in time actually to push. Usually it feels like it's a draw, but it's not because he will not allow you to basically. Okay, I can show you how. He's not allowing you in time to put the king back on the h-square. Now if he goes queen d2, now it's a draw. So I guess here he would just have to start giving you some checks, like for example queen g7, king h1. And now notice the problem. He has a staircase. Check. This. Check. If he goes king f1, then I can just bring the king forward. And this is absolutely easy peasy win. So you have to go back to h1. Then he goes check, king g2, check, king f2 again, king e4. And after king h2 captures, it's not a solid stalemate. So this is just winning for white. The staircase in that case just helps him. It just wins. But he lost some time, and therefore you won. Better player wins. If you have any questions, just let me know. That was a pleasure. I went a little bit fast because there were a lot of calculation involved. And since you calculated pretty well, just a couple of concepts were missed here and there, some inaccuracy in the openings. We can just recheck everything if there's anything unclear. And yeah, see you in the future. Take care.